departs the NCPA to pay their last tributes to Ratan Tata. The funeral is expected to be later this afternoon at around 5 p.m. Those are visuals you can see of Dr. Chandrasekharan, the chairperson of Tata Sons at the moment, along with Chandrababu Naidu there, the Andhra Pradesh Chief Minister. Those are the latest visuals that we are getting at the moment of the funeral that's expected later today. Ratan Tata passing away at the age of 86. Someone who took over the Tata Group at a time of transition. Remember, the great JRD Tata had set the group on a path of growth, but Ratan Tata took it to another level in the post-liberalization era, handling both domestic competition and also importantly taking the group global. It was a period when we saw new Tata companies emerge. TCS became a new powerhouse, and the Tatas made several acquisitions. Not all of them worked, but all of them showed in a way the ambition and the enterprise that Ratan Tata had for his group. But above all else, what he is also going to be remembered as is a fine human being, a very fine human being. Someone who spent a large part of his life devoting monies to charities and philanthropic causes, to animal activists, and to those who sought succor in their old age, citizen groups, and various startups. He mentored them and became truly a legend in his lifetime. Those, as I said, are images from Mumbai. With me in the studio is my colleague and Business Today TV's managing editor, Siddharth Zarabi is with me. And Siddharth and I will take you over the next couple of hours to reminisce with people who knew Ratan Tata well. Please feel free, Siddharth, to also share your memories of Ratan Tata. But let's go first across to Dr. Sanjay Baru. Dr. Sanjay Baru was media advisor to former Prime Minister Dr. Manmohan Singh, has also been a veteran journalist, someone who's edited several financial newspapers. Dr. Baru, put Ratan Tata and his contribution to Indian industry in context for us.
Well, I think, as you correctly said, he inherited a company of some distinction from his uncle JRD, who had, by the time when he gave up in 1991, already established Tata as a premium institution in India. But I think Ratan Tata really was one of the first people, along with someone like Narayan Murthy and Rahul Bajaj, who took advantage of the liberalization of the Indian economy in 1991, launched by Prime Minister Narasimha Rao and Finance Minister Manmohan Singh at that time. The Tatas went global after that. And the fact that today in the world, when you ask the question, what are the Indian brands that you come across in different parts of the world? These are the three dominant brands. There is Tata, there is Infosys, and there is Bajaj. And I think Tata certainly was the leader of the pack because he was not just operating in a newly emerging business like IT, but in traditional manufacturing. And Tata trucks are seen all the way from the dusty roads of Africa to the posh boulevards of London, where he has now brought British products like Land Rover. I think what people will remember, as you again correctly said, is that he was a builder. He built on a very firm foundation, no doubt. But I keep saying that what he inherited from JRD was like the Mughal Empire at the end of its, in the last days of the empire, where you had all these satraps like Rusi Modi in Jamshedpur, like Darbari Seth and Kerkar and various other people who are running their own mini empires in steel, in cement, in tea, in hotels. And Ratan was seen as the new boy around the block, a young man, but he took charge. Right. And while he was a great gentleman, a man of great compassion, I would say there was steel inside velvet when it came to his personality. He was firm in his resolve. When he made mistakes like a Nano, which was a big mistake, but he was firm. He took Nano away from Bengal, took it to Gujarat, and made sure that the product was launched. but that was one of his great failures. But on the other hand, you look at TCS, as you mentioned, look at many other products of the Tatas, and more recently his global ventures. But I think, Ratan Tata is really two different people in one. He
I
was
think
this,
I,
he was this steely personality, a business leader, and at the same time, a fine human being, a true gentleman.
that's beautifully put. A steel exterior, but a velvet interior in a way. Siddharth Zarabi, even as Harish Bijur joins us from Bengaluru, your memories, you must have interviewed him.
Absolutely.
Well, what's the sense? What are your memories, Siddharth?
So, look at his career arc. 30 years before he became chairman, and that's something that he did for 20 years. So, 50 years. And if you look at it from 1962 to 1991, when he then became the chairman, and from 91 onwards, the story of India's liberalization, the story of India's economic growth, I think Mr. Ratan Tata not just had a sort of, a premium window seat there, he was a key player in that. And in the nature of the Tata businesses is the story of how India has also grown on the economic front.
Okay, we're just hearing Amir Khan, the actor, speaking, as well as Chandrababu Naidu. Just let's listen in. I'll come back to you, Siddharth.
About the nation, he proved it. He's a rare businessman. Doing business is one angle, and doing business with ethical is very important. He has kept that all his life through. He has made India visible globally. As an industrialist, he had a great vision. He started around 100 countries his operation.
Allow me to allow Siddharth to complete. Siddharth, interestingly, Sanjay Baru mentioned about post-liberalization. The likes of Rahul Bajaj, Narayan Murthy, Ratan Tata took advantage of it. If you recall, in the early days, there was the talk of the Bombay Club. They were worried that liberalization would make life more difficult for them in terms of competition. Eventually, all of them, and Ratan Tata in particular, embraced it. And as Sanjay Baru again put it, converted a relatively old company, old family company, into a company ready for the 21st century.
I think he changed a lot of the Tata culture of working, including taking on the satraps, and that was a big bruising battle. We were in school and college those days, but we've read about that. But taking India and taking the Tata Group global was one of his biggest strategies. Remember, everyone or most of them were worried at that time, and here was someone who wanted to go overseas. And I believe, as a reporter, that perhaps has to do with his own personal experiences overseas, his love of technology, his diverse interests as a person. Rajeev, he lived a very simple life, but the scope of his ambition was anything but simple, Rajdeep.
Very well put again. He wasn't living in some lavish mansion. He was there by Kulaba, by the sea, and you could often see Ratan there feeding dogs. It was an open house, particularly for stray dogs who...
and Bombay House.
And Bombay House, where he'd created a complete floor for them. Animal activism was part of Ratan Tata's art. There's a picture of me that said our school reunion. Ratan Tata very proudly was from my school, Campion, then went to Cathedral. Was our first batch of the 1940s. But we had only school then till Standard 6, I think. And he and Zubin Mehta were contemporaries. The great... Zubin Mehta and Ratan Tata, and he played the orchestra for Tata Group, while while Zubin took, of course, it across the world. But Harish Bijur, the brand called Ratan Tata, he was not just, he became completely identified, as most people do, with the companies they build. But in his case, he took the company to another level. So he inherited a company, but he was a worthy inheritor.
Absolutely. Radeep, today we are celebrating a life, and a life well lived. for 86 long years, Mr. Ratan Tata. Now, if you really look at it, I think he is a brand in himself for sure. And to an extent, when I look at the Tata Group as such, I don't call it to be a trade name. The Tata is not a trade name. Tata is a persona name. And that persona name represents trust, whether it be right from Jamsetji downwards, on to JRD, and then certainly on to Ratan Tata. But in the case of Ratan Tata, if you look at metrics, we're talking 4 to 130, 4 billion to 130.
Go ahead, please go ahead.
Is the number that we're talking about. And if you look at that number comes with a lot of patience and panache. Mr. Ratan Tata, I would define him to be a gentleman, a complete gentleman, which all of us know him to be that, a corporate soldier, very tough, and we know exactly what he did with the satraps, which has just been discussed, and a purist to the core who says that ethics are very important.
Right.
The Tata name represents trust. I will not compromise it. There are stories and stories of the way he has spoken to governments, central governments, state governments, ministers, and bureaucrats. None of it will be in open space, but all of us know that trust and honesty and integrity are the hallmark of that group. And that was represented by RNT.
Sanjay Baru, the 1990s, which is a decade you documented very carefully, the Manmohanomics years, the Narasimha Rao years, the likes of Ratan Tata, with the audacity of ambition, some would say, decided to embrace competition. Do you believe, in a sense, therefore, they were the children of that generation? The liberalization generation threw up industrialists who didn't have to depend on the license permit Raj. There was a period when industry was seen to be driven by the license permit Raj, including companies like the Tatas. Would you say that really, in a way, Ratan Tata was a product of that revolution, if I may call that, because there were skeptics when he took over Tatas? Will he be able to handle, as you said, the Darbari Seths, the Rusi Modis, all of whom were also empire builders within the Tatas? But he managed to do that and more.
Indeed. In fact, this is a very important point, that the Tatas were not the beneficiaries of the license control permit Raj. In fact, one of the reasons why JRD funded the Swatantra Party and criticized Jawaharlal Nehru and Indira Gandhi for their economic policies was that he was opposed to the license permit control Raj. And if you look at all the studies of the licensing system, the principal beneficiaries were the Birlas. This has been recorded fairly well. So when liberalization came, you're absolutely right. I mean, I think Ratan Tata took advantage of the new environment and took his company forward, while at the same time consolidating that company. But I think I should mention one thing of interest. Not many people may be aware of this, which is that one of the reasons why JRD was a bit upset with the Nehrus was the nationalization of Air India, a company that JRD started. And during Rajiv Gandhi's tenure, he made Ratan Tata chairman of Air India for a brief while, almost like a gesture. But finally, when the government of India, the Modi government, decided to privatize Air India, the Tata board actually looked at Air India and said, no, this is not a company we want to take over. And the board discussed at great length that, Air India's finances were not in good shape. Organizationally, it was a white elephant. And therefore, they did not approve of the idea of takeover of Air India. At which point, Ratan Tata stepped in personally and said, over my dead body, we are going to take over Air India. It was an emotional decision. In fact, as one board member said to me, it was not a commercial decision, it was an emotional decision, because Air India was taken away by the government from JRD, and it is Ratan who brought it back to the Tata fold in the last few years, and it is now on the cusp of integrating with Vistara. It's a major story in Ratan Tata's life, that he felt very emotional, even though it was not a commercially viable decision, that he should take over something that his mentor had started.
It's fascinating to sort of hear that someone takes a decision as major as that, to decide to go back to take over Air India simply because it was an emotional decision associated with the family over the years. Amir Khan, the actor, is among the various celebrities who's there at the paying their respects to Ratan Tata there in Mumbai. Let's listen in to what he had to say.
आज का दिन बहुत ही दुख भरा है हम सब के लिए, पूरे देश के लिए। रतन जी ने जो कंट्रीब्यूशन दिया है, उनकी कंपनी टाटा, उनसे पहले से और उनके लीडरशिप में जो कंट्रीब्यूशन दिया है देश के लिए, वो अमूल्य है। इट्स प्राइसलेस एंड बहुत ही रेयर किस्म के इंसान, और हम सब उनको बेहद मिस करेंगे।
Okay, I want to go to another special guest at this moment, Harish Bijur and Sanjay Baru. Just hold on for a minute. I'm joined at the moment by the former brand custodian of the Tata Group, someone who worked very closely with Ratan Tata for more than 2 decades. Mukund Rajan of Tata Sons, formerly of Tata Sons, joins me. Mukund, your memories of Ratan Tata on this very sad day, how do you remember him, your long association with him?
I think, first of all, a very fine human being, very unlike the caricatures that you would have had in the 1980s and 1990s, where a typical Indian business person. He was somebody who was extremely articulate, very well-read, very exposed to international trends, and yet a thorough gentleman in India, somebody who would never throw his weight around, who would treat the peons in Bombay House just as well as he would treat senior corporate leaders, somebody who insisted on carrying his own bags at the airports, rejected any semblance of entourage around him, very down-to-earth human being. And at the same time, a fantastic business person. He did the things that were so necessary for the Tatas. He took over in 91, soon after liberalization, and it was very critical in that decade to prepare the Tata Group to take on competition, both domestic competition as well as the entry of international companies that are coming to the Indian market. And once he had cemented the ability of Indian companies in Tata's to really compete, he then encouraged them to go overseas in the next 10 years of his chairmanship. And that saw tremendous growth of the Tata Group from a $10 billion group that was largely Indian to a $100 billion group that had made a name all across the world by the time he retired in 2012. So I think both as a human being and as somebody who was a role model, I think, for business persons around the world, I had this fantastic privilege of having worked closely with him.
You know, as you just mentioned, I think the outpouring of grief is not just at the passing away of an iconic industrialist, but also a fantastic human being. Is that something that stands out for you about him? I recall during 26/11, in the aftermath of the terror attack in Mumbai, meeting him, seeing the way he was treating Tata's employees at the Taj. That was very, very special, almost as if he personally felt aggrieved by the deaths that had taken place at the Taj Hotel. Is that what stood out for you?
Absolutely, absolutely. He really felt for people. Even when you think about the corporate purpose statement that he crafted in the 1990s for the Tata Group, which holds true to this day, it is about improving the quality of life of the communities we serve. And that was something he felt passionately about. He felt that if you're in business, there has to be something that you do to really improve the lot of people around you. You cannot have a successful enterprise in a sea of poverty. And he was a nationalist at one level. If you think about all the big projects he undertook, whether it was designing and building the first Indian passenger car, the Tata Indica, then later on, the vision to create the lowest cost vehicle in the world, the Tata Nano. These are all projects meant to bring mobility to the Indian customer. And he really felt that Tatas were in a special place with the capability to really do these things for communities right to the bottom of the pyramid in India. Similarly, his work at the Tata Charities as chairman of India's largest charities, the Tata Trusts, enormous amount of good work that these charities are able to do. There are very few non-profits, I would dare say, in this country of any note, which have not at some point or the other received grants from the Tata Trust. And he really tried to make the companies and the trust work seamlessly together, something that we often saw in action when you had natural disasters and the Tata Group really pitched in to help communities that had been disrupted by floods, by earthquakes, and so on. So somebody who was passionate about the way in which business could really be a transformative power and a power for good.
Any personal memory in your own interactions with him, a piece of advice he gave you while you were at Tata's?
Well, the very first interview, in a sense, to join his office that I had with him, I had a master's and a doctorate, but in social sciences. I did not have an MBA. And I remember telling him, Mr. Tata, are you sure that I will be able to support you well in your office? I was to start as his executive assistant and eventually became his principal staff officer. And I said, I don't have an MBA. Is that going to be a problem for you? And he said, Mukund, the only thing you need to succeed in the corporate world is good common sense. And that's something I repeat so many times to youngsters these days, that it's not all about what you're taught in classrooms. There's so much you can learn by doing, but obviously you need a boss with empathy, somebody who's going to coach and guide you and invest in you. And that's something that Ratan Tata is always able and willing to do. He really enjoyed being with young people. And I think it's also had something to do with the fact that he was a very young person, in a sense, in the boardroom of Tata Sons when he took charge of the Tata Group. All his peers around the table were people who were 2 and 3 decades older than him. And I think that made him quite sensitive and conscious about the fact that young people need to always be supported. And later in life, of course, we all know the huge hand he's had in supporting many entrepreneurs and very young startups of this country. So a remarkable person and somebody that one was very fortunate to know.
You know, as you said, he completely, in a way, transformed the Tata's group, took it global. This at times led to some upheaval within during the Cyrus Mistry period, in particular, the battle for succession. Was Ratan Tata someone who would deal with the good times and the bad times with that same equanimity and grace that was really his hallmark?
I think he was able to handle stress and pressure. But what I do think happened over a period of time, I mentioned in the 1990s, he had colleagues who were much older than him. But by the end of that decade, when he was firmly in the saddle, all of them had retired. And through the 2000s, he had a new set of colleagues. And I think he was now the elder statesman at the boardroom. And what possibly happened as a result was he became increasingly isolated. There were fewer people that he had whose counsel he could rely on, fewer people that he could take collegiate decisions with. And perhaps in that process, some mistakes may have happened. Unfortunately, I also think luck was against him. Some of the largest acquisitions in the Tata Group's history occurred just before the global financial crisis. And I don't think too many people in the world, let alone India, saw that coming. So that obviously had an impact on the fortunes of the group. So I think he was somebody who could take the stress and the pressure, but perhaps to some extent let down by the fact that people around him who could have been perhaps more supportive were not there when they were needed the most. And there was no time more critical when this would have been helpful, I think, than the period when he fell out with Cyrus Mistry, his successor. And that really created potentially an existential crisis at the time for the Tatas. And I do believe that there was a flawed narrative that he was persuaded to buy into. And if only there'd been more wise counsel around him, perhaps some of the actions that took place at that point of time would not have happened. But nevertheless, you have to take the totality of what he really did and contributed. And I think his greatest contribution to Tatas and to India was his bold vision and a sense that India and Indians could do well, could do better. We didn't have to restrict ourselves only to the confines of this country, but we could be a global force to be reckoned with.
One final question. In all the meetings in boardrooms, would you be treated to some good old Parsi humor, Parsi food maybe, or maybe given a sense of his great love for dogs and animals?
all of that. And I think the sense of humor is the one that one really remembers him the most for. You saw a lot of that, very evident, particularly in the 1990s. Sadly, as he sort of grew older and became, as I said, the senior statesman in the boardroom, some of those jokes would sort of start vanishing from his interactions with people. But he always had the sense of humor. I think that was one critical element in keeping you sane in the kind of tension-filled job that the chairman of India's largest group is sort of prosecuting responsibilities for. One episode I can very quickly recount. Sitting at the boardroom, surrounded by some of the most eminent people in India. One of these was the person who built the NCPA infrastructure that we all cherish these days, Jamshed Baba. Baba had this habit of slipping off his shoes under the boardroom table. And Mr. Tata, spotting this at one meeting, slowly and conveniently sort of kicked those shoes sideways and then pushed them aside to the end of the boardroom table, which Baba didn't notice. At the end of the meeting, as all the directors are filing out, Mr. Baba gets up and suddenly discovers there are no shoes. And Mr. Tata, who had sort of obviously engineered this, smiling, chuckling with some of his directors. I mean, that is what the man was capable of. So somebody who could have a wicked sense of humor, but ultimately a heart of gold beneath all of it.
That's right, a heart of gold, a wicked sense of humor, and the spirit and the ambition to take his group global, and the emotion quotient to ensure that Air India remained within the Tata Group. Mukund Rajan, thank you very much for paying that fulsome tribute to your one-time boss. Sanjay Baru, you're listening to that. That's a rare quality, isn't it? To have compassion and be a compassionate capitalist in the truest sense of the word. Would that be a way to define Ratan Tata, the ultimate compassionate capitalist?
Absolutely. I think that was in some ways his real contribution to the kind of social, civil society in India, that Ratan Tata and the Tata Group set the standards for philanthropy. Many businessmen have done philanthropy in India, but I think they set the standards. They were recognized as an organization that people could go to. A lot of NGOs across the country, and many of them I've been personally kind of associated with, aware of, who have benefited from funding from the Tatas. And at a time when Indian business was thought to be stingy and narrow-minded and money-minded and not at all conscious of its social obligations, I think the Tata set a standard which others have followed. I mean, we have seen Azim Premji, Narayan Murthy, Nandan Nilekani, many other companies now, in fact, spending money on education, on social welfare, on a range of activities, so civil society activities. But I think the Tatas really set the bar and set the entire framework for that kind of thing. And we owe it to him. I mean, it's not just Indian business that owes it to him, but Indian civil society too owes it to him for having defined the framework within which India operates.
Harish Biju, that question to you as well, because you deal with a number of new age corporates, advise them on branding. Is there something that Ratan Tata has a lesson for all of them? The need to be seen as truly compassionate capitalists, putting philanthropy first.
Yes, I think so. If you look at Mr. Tata, he's really a person who is remembered for more of what he's done outside the corporate boardroom than within the corporate boardroom. I have a theory which says that corporate honchos aren't remembered as much for their corporate board decisions because much of the time they become very collective decisions. But corporate honchos are remembered for how they touch lives of people outside of that boardroom. And I think every dog lover in this country loves Mr. Tata completely. And every person who speaks of cancer possibly loves Mr. Tata completely. The kind of work that's gone in that space is humongous. So literally the entire ethos that he brought to the party to say that the consumer is more important than anyone else. The more car per car kind of a line, which we speak about at times, is just that. And to an extent, the ethos that it brings with it. So to an extent, I call Mr. Tata the quiet Indian. without wearing jingoism on his sleeves, he was a true blue Indian. He was totally talking India, and he was an audacious Indian. And Mukund spoke about an audacious, a wicked sense of humor. I'd like to speak about Mr. Tata's wicked sense of business. Talk about Tetley, which was a project spearheaded by my ex-boss, Mr. R.K. Krishnakumar. The buyout of Tetley was possibly India telling the whole world that India goes to the UK. This is reverse colonialism at play. Chorus, a buy into Glacio from Coca-Cola, and we're talking a big name. And of course, the final audacious and the big audacious act of Air India as of now. And I wish it all success, and I hope it does exceedingly well, of course. So if you look at Mr. Tata, he was a quiet Indian, would not wear jingoism on his sleeve, yet TCS sponsors the marathons in some of the best cities overseas, okay, in the United States of America. What are you doing? You're doing an India outside campaign, like the Intel Inside campaign. This is an India outside campaign. I think Mr. Tata spearheaded the first India outside mentality very quietly without wearing jingoism on his sleeve. The quiet Indian at play.
So very fine words. In a moment, I'll be joined by Dilip Cherian, another individual who's at Perfect Relations crafted the branding of so many corporates. Devesh, our correspondent, is there at the funeral. Devesh, just before I come to Dilip, Devesh, what time is the actual funeral? Okay, we'll go back to Devesh in a moment. I'm also going to play in a little while a visual of stray dogs who have been brought in to pay tribute to Ratan Tata, because if you don't know this, Ratan Tata loved animals. And Ratan Tata, over the years, supported various groups that worked among stray dogs in particular. We'll play those visuals when they come to us. But Dilip Cherian, your memories, what for you stands out about Ratan Tata? Everyone we speak to says compassionate capitalist. Define that for us in any examples that you saw, something that the Tata Group did that others did not.
In my avatar as a journalist, I encountered him when well before he started his collaboration with Singapore Airlines. And I know that airlines was always a gleam in his eye, and he managed to fulfill that in 3 iterations. And I think that was one of the things that I remember about him. But as we all know, he was keen to take India to the world, and he did that with his acquisitions in the UK of Chorus and then of car companies, etc. But I think that, I remember him in my communications and PR days as a man with an ability to create leaders. He nurtured them. He ensured that even if you had a private meeting with him, he would have them in the meeting with him immediately during the same time, minutes after. So here was a man who knew how to deal with the confidential and with confidence and take his leaders up the path that he was leading them and lead from the front. So the ability to create a corporate culture where leaders could be nurtured and to have a large corporation which had a bigger vision than it could have were 2 attributes I remember of him, both as a journalist as well later on as a person who managed images. But I think there's one more thing that I'd like to quickly touch upon.
Yes,
everybody's talked about his passion for dogs, but I think we forget that he was at various times trustees and chairman of the Population Foundation of India and of the National Foundation of India. So here was a man who knew that it was work which was happening at the grassroots, values that mattered to him, and issues that very often had pushback from the establishment, that he wanted to lend not just money, but also time and physical presence. I think leaders who try and associate themselves with things which are much bigger than them, much larger than them, are the leaders that this country desperately needs at all times.
Dilip Cherian, my memories of him is that Ratan Tata could be allured through emotion. And I'll tell you why. Ratan Tata comes from the first batch of my school, Campion, a South Mumbai school of the late 1940s. And those are the pictures. We were having a reunion at the Taj, and we were raising money for the school for building a new hall. And we went and met Ratan Tata, and we said, "Sir, if you don't come, then who else will?" And he said, "But, I get lots of invites." I said, "Yes, sir, but this is from an invite from the school that you first went to." And we managed to convince him. There in the center is another ex-Campionite, Uday More, and we were able to raise enough money for the school and for our old boys. So we take great pride in the fact that, well, we went to the school of Ratan Tata. But that's life, and it's been very special to at least have had some kind of a relationship, I guess, however little it was, with Ratan Tata. Ratan Tata, a giant in India's industrial landscape, he leaves behind not only a business empire, but there's also the crucial succession question. With no children to inherit his legacy, Tata's long-term leadership has been managed for now by N. Chandrasekaran, and rather well is that. But as speculation rises about who will lead Tata Trust in particular, all eyes are on Noel Tata and his family. Take a look at this story.
Sir, wait. पीछे आओ ना बस बहुत आगे हो गए सर सॉरी चलो ओके
Ratan Tata, the tallest titan in the Indian industrial firmament. Not only was the 86-year-old a business icon, he also set new industry standard for ethical business practices and community development. At the helm of an empire worth 34 lakh crore rupees, Tata remained single and did not have any children. But reports say that there is no uncertainty in Tata Group's succession plan. For the last 7 years, a complete outside man, N. Chandrasekaran, has led the Tata Group as its chairperson. Under the 61-year-old former CEO and MD of TCS, under the leadership of 61-year-old former CEO and MD of TCS, the group entered new sunrise industries like semiconductors, technology, artificial intelligence and renewable energy. As the boss, he also revived the steel and vehicle businesses. But Ratan Tata was also the chairperson of the Tata Trusts. These trusts, particularly the Sir Dorabji Tata Trust and Sir Ratan Tata Trust, are the primary shareholders of Tata Sons, owning nearly 52% of the company. There is speculation now over who will head these Tata Trusts. Historically, the leadership of Tata Trust has been linked to the Tata family and the Parsi community. Ratan Tata's tenure marked the last time an individual held both the roles of chairperson of Tata Sons and Tata Trusts. The company's articles of association were amended in 2022, ensuring that these roles remain separate in the future. Noel Tata, Ratan Tata's half-brother and chairperson of Trent, is widely seen as a leading candidate. At 67, Noel's appointment would align with the preference within the Parsi community for a family member to head the trusts. His experience in the Tata Group, spanning more than 4 decades, adds to the potential candidacy. If selected, Noel would become the 11th chairperson of the Sir Dorabji Tata Trust and 6th chairperson of the Sir Ratan Tata Trust. Noel's 3 children are also expected to take more prominent leadership roles in the group. Maya Tata, an alumnus of Bayes Business School and the University of Warwick, has played key roles at Tata Opportunities Fund and Tata Digital. The 34-year-old was instrumental in the launch of Tata New App. The 32-year-old Neville Tata is the youngest of Noel's children and is married to Manasi Kirloskar, the vice chairperson of Toyota Kirloskar Motors. Neville leads Star Bazaar, a well-known hypermarket chain under Trent Limited. The eldest of the siblings is Leah Tata. The 39-year-old has been involved in the hospitality sector, having worked with the Taj Hotel Resorts and Palaces. She currently oversees operations at the Indian Hotel Company. Whoever wears the impossibly large shoes of Ratan Tata at Tata Trusts will have the intricate task of maintaining the balance between the philanthropic goals of the trusts and the commercial interests of the Tata Group. Bureau Report, Business Today Television.
As we said, Ratan Tata's funeral is expected at around 5 p.m. today. Lots of those, with every passing minute, you can see the crowds of particularly VVIP politicians, mainly from Maharashtra, but across the country as well, the likes of Chandrababu Naidu, along with the Uddhav Thackeres, the Eknath Shindes, the Amit Shahs, have all come there. I want to be joined at this moment by Devesh, our correspondent who's on the ground. Devesh, is that right, that it's around 5:30 that the funeral will take place?
Well, we spoke to the Tata Group officials who are present here at the crematorium, and they say that around 5 p.m. the last rites could be performed. As of now, the Ratan Tata remains are at NCPA grounds, and very shortly they'll be leaving from NCPA grounds towards the Worli crematorium. In our camera frame, you can see that a police team to give state honor, state funeral to Mr. Ratan Tata is present here at the crematorium. A gun salute will be given to